attention. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for coming today. This is a public forum on town facilities for soliciting input from our senior community. So to give a little background on why we're here today, the selectmen have made it one of their goals to develop an infrastructure plan which includes town-owned buildings and land. Back in 2013, a building reuse committee was formed and to look at the use and reuse of the buildings, including Town Hall, Ritter, Brooks House, T.C. Passier's, and the primary school. After the building reuse committee dissolved earlier this year, the board began holding a series of workshops and these on this topic, and it was discussed in detail at a meeting in September. And there have been discussion on various town buildings that are on many meetings, including selectmen meetings, capital planning meetings, and finance committee meetings. And the reason we're doing a public forum is to hear more input from you on this topic and what you would like to see done with the building. So the format for today's meeting is we'll be having a thought session, and Land Use Director Adam Burney will be heading that the rest of the meeting after I speak. And this is to get ideas on the topic, increase public participation on the future use of town buildings, and build consensus about the future uses of town property. And this will work towards an overall plan for the buildings. So we'll discuss how the Village Center District impacts the use of town buildings. Like I said, have the thought exercise session and small breakout groups if that format works with this group. And the facilitator will propose talking points for the small groups to report back on to the larger group. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Adam Burney.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you all for coming out. Good morning. Push this up so I'm not hiding behind the screen because I see some of you folks over here. Am I speaking loud enough so everyone can hear? Yeah. All right. So, Heather mentioned the Village District and the Architectural Preservation District. Some of you are aware, and if you're not, there's a district within the center of town that was created in May of 2015 that changes some of the use. It's the Village District. It allows for more small-scale commercial uses in downtown, similar to some of the things you might find in not to be confused with the Village District, the shopping center of the village. Small retail, service establishments, artisan uses, and so the reuse of town buildings would be, any town building being reused would be opened up to those potential uses. Additionally, there's the Architectural Preservation District, which lays over the Historic District, the National Register Historic District, which has existed for several decades with the Village District. And within that district, it doesn't necessarily affect the use of the buildings. What it does is affect the way the buildings look. These two districts were passed in conjunction with one another. The Architectural Preservation District's intent was to retain the look and character of downtown Lunenburg. It has a very residential with some mixed municipal and institutional uses currently, and it has a distinct look. There isn't a specific style, but there's a general flavor. And the idea of this district was to allow for an independent body, the Architectural Preservation District Commission, to review any external changes to the building to prevent a degradation of the building's character or the character of the area. So substantially, the look of the area won't change no matter what the uses of those buildings are. If they remain residential, they remain residential. If a doctor or a lawyer or even a small retail wanted to purchase one of these homes and start to use it for commercial purposes, it would retain that look that it currently has. There may be a sign added, but you won't see them knocking out the front wall and putting in a big glass storefront or those kind of things. This is for what they call contributing properties, which is anything 75 years or older, which all of our municipal buildings in this area are. But if there's a 1974 raised ranch, that's not going to, if someone chose to knock that down, that wouldn't fall into this. But the more classic and older homes that have historic value and add to the character of the area wouldn't have the ability to be damaged without a review. It doesn't necessarily prevent demolition, but it puts an extra layer of review onto it. There are probably a couple of buildings in the district, maybe some that the town owns, that may be beyond being able to be saved or may be better served both for the community and the building itself to be demolished. The Architectural Preservation District can certainly allow that, but it does need to go through their review. So there are some things that these impact. They don't necessarily change the ability to use the buildings differently. They don't change the ability to make alterations to the buildings. They just add a layer of review and protection to the area to make sure that there isn't a drastic change. So what I think is important, and we did this the last time, and it had a different impact than I thought that it would, but it was really still very helpful, is we're talking about the town buildings. And you folks are all aware of the town buildings. We're talking about the Brooks House, the TC Passios, the Town Hall, the Ritter Building, and the old primary school. These have served a variety of functions over the years. I'm sure you've all interacted with them in different ways and all have very strong feelings. I can see a few faces out there that I recognize that I know certainly have distinct feelings about the way things get used. And what we're trying to look at now is not only the reuse of these, but the general tone of what happens in conjunction with these buildings. So we want to try and remove ourselves from a little bit, what history we have with these buildings, and we want to start to think to what's happening in the future. So I want everyone to take a minute or two, think about places that you've traveled in your life, locally, exotic destinations, wherever, that you feel good about, that you like, that you feel comfortable, and what are some of the physical and other aspects of those areas that make you want to go back there, or that you would like to import into the village district or the town buildings that are sort of distinct, or maybe we haven't thought about, so that you can frame sort of our discussion on how do we get some of those elements in with what we're trying to do. So, there is a handout that went around. I don't know if everybody got one. It had some talking points on it. If there aren't enough, while you go and do this, I'll go get a couple more made. If you want to jot down a few notes about things that you like about physical places that make you feel good, we'll use it later on when we do some of our breakout sessions and talk about what might happen with the town buildings. So can you raise your hand if you didn't get a handout? Okay, so I need 10 more. I'll be right back with us. Just the front sheet, thank you. I come kind of...
Anybody know Occupational suggestion? The Patriots?
Who's that? They won the war, didn't they? That was like 250 years ago.
Yeah, very good. I'm reading a lot Lunenburg discussing, and the question keeps coming up. How much is this going to cost? What is the real breakdown? And I know our building reuse committee has done something in the past. Is there any way to get those numbers back being visible? Because I know there's a lot of chat about if we're going to do something, how much is this going to cost us?
I think that's a cart before the horse kind of question, because there hasn't been any. The purpose of this discussion is what do people want to see before there's a decision made about what's going to happen. So you can't put a cost to an unknown. And I think what we're trying to do today is identify conceptually what people want to see in town facilities. And as we get into the talking points, you'll see a little bit more of that. So I don't know what it's going to cost. And I think it really depends on a multitude of different factors. And I think that once there's a direction chosen that people generally agree with, then at that point you have to start doing cost estimates based on that.
Right. I didn't mean to derail.
No, that's okay. And I also think the condition studies that are underway of the town buildings will give a little bit clearer information on what exists. I mean, right now there's a lot of speculation about what needs to be done to this building or that building for reuse, what a reasonable estimate of that cost might be. And I think a lot of that has been anecdotal, and I think having a little bit more empirical data on that will move us in a direction that gives more concrete understanding of what needs to be done and more potential for funding. All right, so now everybody's got a handout? So we'll use these when we do the breakout sessions, but we're going to run through what they are. So really what we're here today to talk about is the 5 town buildings, what might happen to them as we move forward, and what people's kind of desire to come out of it is, and what people are comfortable with or would like to see those buildings used for. So the first talking point is, what do you see the future of these buildings as? And again, we're talking Town Hall, Ritter, Primary, the old primary school, the Brooks House, and the T.C. Passios. Everybody, as I said, has had different experiences and interactions with them. None of these buildings other than Town Hall, are currently being used as what they were originally intended for. I mean, I know TCP has some students in it right now, but that's kind of an emergency short-term situation. And as we move forward, can you envision these buildings being used for purposes that aren't municipal or school? And if you can, what would those purposes look like? I don't think anyone's saying any of these things are specifically going to happen, but if they did happen, under what circumstances or parameters do you think that it would be reasonable or you would like to see them reused? And again, I'm not looking for any answers right now. You'll talk about these in the groups, and then we'll come back together and we'll have a larger group discussion. And I do encourage you guys to find people that you don't know and sit and talk with them, because I have a feeling that in general, I know I do, when I'm with my friends, we talk about the same stuff, and we all know what someone else is going to say. So find someone you don't know and hear what they have to say, and you might agree, you might not. Second talking point, downtown, village district, whatever you want to call it, is there a need for more green space? And if there is, what kind of shape and attributes do you want to see the green space have? And is there activities that you'd specifically like to see incorporated into the use of that space? And what are those activities? And how do they marry up to either what's currently happening here, what might happen here, or expand upon some of those things?
Are these supposed to correlate with the thing out here? That doesn't match.
You're right, they don't. Well, I guess number 2 is... No, they're not the same. Well, the first one is. I think we missed the green space on the, looks like a formatting error, but, okay, so we'll add the green space in there, but the second one is now the third one. Sorry about that. There's been a lot of talk about municipal offices. Right now, we occupy 2 buildings downtown. There's been some talk about consolidation. So what does that consolidation look like to you folks? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? How does that add functionality for individuals being serviced by town offices? And then what amenities would you expect to receive from town offices when you go to visit them? What sort of things are important to have there? All right, number 3 on your sheet, number 4 on the slideshow is: are there any town buildings that we should demolish? Within the village district, not any town building that you think you don't want to see out there anymore. But and if you do feel like there's a building or buildings that need to come down, what should that land be used for? Should we build new buildings? Should it be open space? Should it be incorporated into something else? Number 5, there's been a lot of talk about the use of the kitchen at the TC Passios. I think building on top of that, there's the idea of shared office or makerspace, which is, something that has become more popular over the last 5 or 10 years. And essentially these are community spaces that are operated either by a public or private entity that lease their infrastructure, whether it's 3D printers, kitchen equipment, internet, computer office space, to individuals for fixed time periods. So they can come in and they don't need to do heavy investment to be able to get startup projects or models done, and they kind of work off of each other's brain power and energy to kind of move their ideas forward without having to get large capital investments to do so. So is makerspace something that the town may want to see here? If so, what kind of makerspace would make sense, do you think, and where would be a good space for this? And then sort of the $64,000 question. Everybody can always identify when they see something that they don't like or they think there's a problem, and collectively I don't think it's hard for people to say, oh well, this isn't working, it should be done better. But what's the biggest problem that needs to be addressed in our town center? And what are some ideas you might have for addressing that? It could be in connection with municipal consolidation, redevelopment of downtown or town center, or it could be something just, there's too many pigeons. I mean, we don't have any pigeons here, but that's something a lot of people complain about in more dense areas. What kind of things do you see as problematic around the center of Lunenburg that you think need to be addressed most quickly, and what are some ideas that you might have for addressing those? So now I think what we're going to do is we're going to break into groups of 5 or 6 people each, talk about these talking points, and I think what's also important to note is we're kind of in dreamland. The question was asked about cost and what's this going to cost, and I know that cost is important. When we go to implement these things, we have to be able to have a hold of the cost. We have to be able to identify a funding stream. We have to be able to be sustainable about the funds that are spent on doing it. But we're still in the idea phase. So, let's not let cost constrain the conversation in a way that you say, oh, we shouldn't talk about that because it costs too much. maybe something that costs too much can't be done, but maybe there's an alternative that would address some of those same issues or bring you back to that same place at a different cost. So, clearly we're probably not going to build a skyscraper town hall that has, beaucoup amenities for everybody, but if there's something that you think is important, it's better to put it out there and have it on record and have the conversation about it and either figure out that we can't afford it or it's not cost effective as we move into a more solid design. Then you say, oh, well, it costs too much, so I don't want to say it, and come back around and have everything get designed and someone say, oh, well, really, really great to have this, and find out that, we probably could have done it at a reasonable cost or some reasonable facsimile of that. So we're in the brainstorming, dreaming session. So think big, think unrestrained by cost at this time, but recognize that as things become reality, cost becomes a factor and some things are going to get dialed back in. So we'll, Heather, myself, the three selectmen who are here, will sort of mill about, and we're happy to answer any questions or give any input or help you move questions along if you need help with that. But like I said, I think 5 or 6 people per group really gets a good discussion going. We'll give you about a half hour to sort of talk about it, and then we've got this nice white paper board, and I've got a nice black marker, and we can get together and we can talk about what everybody thinks, and we'll start taking some notes that we'll bring back for the future sessions that we start to move into. Do we have any last questions before we break out?
Hi, do you mind saying copy 22 up on the slide?
No, not at all.
Thanks.
All right, ready, go.
I mean, look, it took them 60 years to get a new police station. I mean, the police station was a 4x7 room. In the fire station, that was our police station for years and years. Okay, and I'm quite happy with the police station now.
What's the same with the high school?
I mean, it took
They needed a new high school for years and years, and they had how many study groups, and finally we got one, and now everyone's going, is it going to be big enough because of all the growth in town?
Oh, I know.
It's like, and I asked that question the first time they were talking about in school, I don't know, baseball, I said, my kids were in school in the 90s.
Federal funds went away in the project now.
2012. Yeah. It's approved by everyone. We approved it, the town approved it. And there's just no federal funding for most of it.
Wasn't it the person
I have the plans for it.
they also wanted an act?
There's a garden now, there's a garden down the county.
I think now we should just clear it down.
Having no car, do you think it's worth more parking in the backyard and somehow it's going to get better? It just goes down in value and costs you money. We're wasting money. That's a no-brainer.
That's what I think of that.
Does everybody, let's take a poll. Who thinks we should tear down the school? And what would it cost? Primary building.
I don't know.
No, we're not supposed to talk about cost. That's key. That's key. Not talking about
How about waste? I'm talking about waste. Wasting money on that. Or even keeping that thing going.
There's very little money being spent on it. They don't make that.
There's no interest, so let's...
They should have access.
Are we
They should have some kind of house.
They should. It's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, they don't, our places, I live in the senior house.
No, and you know what you have.
I know what's going on there, they're not doing anything. When you ask them, our meeting that they give us is 15 minutes, sometimes 10 because they're busy.
It's absolutely.
They don't have
Yes.
people in town that
There
really...
needs to be more.
I'd like to take a tour of this building and see what it's like. Which one? The one that's next door? Oh, the Atco. Yeah. Is it feasible? How old is the building?
I think it's pretty old.
70. No,
45 years ago, and Emily Foster was there. John Ramsey was drumming on a guitar. I had a little baby.
Okay, we'll start being congenial. What group wants to start? Okay. I love it when Emery volunteers. So you guys get to be group one. We're just going to take some general notes so we have stuff to remember and memorialize this conversation. We'll go through each group, and then if we want to have a greater discussion about some of the points that were brought up, we'll do that. So why don't you go right ahead?
Can I stand right here?
You can stand wherever you would like.
Okay. So I've just outlined some notes. They're not all in order, so just take everything I say and understand what our group is interested in. I think the first thing that we came up with that our group really loved was green space. Okay? And I'll get into a little bit more detail. But green space, a winter festival in our town each year, bringing the community together and just have a really good time, at least once a year as a winter festival. Bring in more community activities all through the year that incorporates all of our citizens. You know, we have a lot of activities for children, but let's bring activities that involve everyone so that we can all have a nice community together. Leasing buildings rather than selling the buildings is something that this group initiated their thoughts on.
And that's for non-municipal purposes?
Pardon me?
Is that for non-municipal purposes?
Right.
Okay.
Both. You know, I mean, I'll tell you more. One of the things is through the town is the speed limit in the historic district. This group, one of their first issues was, is there any way to reduce the speed limit in our historic district? A lot of accidents. Trucks and
Pedestrians.
It's dangerous for the pedestrians, and one person said that a family was walking across the street and almost got run over with their 4 children. Sidewalks should be cleared. I know we have some sidewalks that go up Mass Avenue, and in the winter they don't clear them. They still have the snow on them. If we could keep all the sidewalks cleared, I know Jack does a great job keeping the sidewalks in front of my house, or his group. They're cleared immediately, but anyway. The old primary school, a gentleman here, Bill Lasco, and the rest of the group, they had a great idea. Make it a green space. Actually tear that building down. Get rid of the old TC Paseo building, the old primary school building that's been rotting because it hadn't been taken care of for 400,000 years. So tear it down, make it a beautiful green space, have concerts, and, make it a community activity space. Bring back bonfires. A lot of the people like that, and if there's a way that our town can make that happen. And another suggestion was rather than move the town hall to the TC Paseo, to redesign the existing town hall to create space for the employees. You don't need huge rooms, but you can make petitions and have space. Everything is a technology, so if you can reduce the
the amount of space that's needed and incorporate everyone into one building. The Ritter, if we move those people out, then we have the Ritter that's open. Their suggestion was to lease the Ritter and make it into storefronts. So, and you've been into storefronts where you walk in and there's a little storefront here, the Fulton shop, the next one is a coffee shop, the next one is a... So you can lease that building and make all those into storefronts. Another suggestion about the TC Patio is that the town center needs some expansion. They need a little bit more space. And since they have a gym and several other things that they could use, that would be good for expansion. As well as
the town center? Or
teen center. And also, it would allow for expansion for classroom, both for the primary school and the high school and the middle school, should that come to pass. The other point that you wanted us to discuss was what town do we see as a town that we like. So my little group here, they loved Petersham, Essex, and Georgetown. These towns are New England preserved towns with a town green. All of their municipal buildings are the same old municipal buildings that they've been using. And also they have little small shops. Thank you.
All right, who wants to be group two? I had no doubt.
I'll go first. Okay, so after that, I'm kind of embarrassed because we spent a lot of time trying to come to consensus, which we did not. But we came to consensus on 3 buildings. One is we all want to preserve the Ritter, and we had different ideas about what could happen with that. Some of it was town office space. Some of us were interested in bringing artists and artisans in there, but we all agreed that it was a building that we wanted to preserve and put something in there, but use it and use it to its capacity. We all agreed that we want the primary building gone, and we all agreed that that should be a green space, and we need more green space. And we all agreed that if we do demolish buildings, we want the land preserved, we want it green. And we all agreed that we're not selling any land, we want to keep the land. And the other building that we came to agreement on was the Brooks House. We all want that gone. So that was 3 buildings we agreed on. The other we did not. The other 2 we did not come to agreement on. There was half the group that would like to see the town hall renovated and used. There were some different ideas about that.
Why don't you share those?
We thought that, we all thought it would be used to capacity. Some of us thought that it's just too far gone, and that it's an eyesore and it's not utilitarian and it's not safe, and those of us who wanted it gone agreed to listen to the other folks who thought that there were a couple of ideas. One is that you could bring some artisans and some other groups of people in there. One was that you move people to the Ritter. One was that you move people to the TC Patios. There were several thoughts on all of that, but...
Okay, well, so you said town hall. We're talking about the building itself, not the function of town hall. So you felt that some people felt artists and artisans were something that can be in there. Other thoughts for the use of the building?
Well, keep it
as town hall.
as town hall and use some of the space
I see what you're saying.
to augment
Continue
it.
to operate in 2 spaces.
Yes, but renovate it and make it safe, utilitarian, and they thought that this was, there are many people that think this is Lunenburg, this is us, and we should preserve it.
And there was part of your group that felt it was an unsafe and past structure that should be retired in some manner?
Basically demolished. There's no place to park, it's not safe, and it's a money pit. And we did not come to agreement with those two factions. And as far as the TC Passios, there were some factions that thought we should move all of the town hall functions over there and use that space. There was some part of our group that felt that that should be demolished, become green space, and that's the faction that thought we should use the town hall and the Ritter as the town hall buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Right? And let's think, did I get everything?
Yeah.
That's as far as we got. We didn't get into this other cool stuff that everybody else got.
You know what? Everybody works in a different process.
Thank you. They brought the windows.
I think these nice ladies in the back were battling for the group 2 status.
Okay, this is going to be unanimous for tearing down the old primary,
Okay.
making it a green space. And it could be also overflow parking. If we needed it for some function in town, it would help the Historical Society. There's a lot of things you could do. Secondly, the town hall's a keeper. You certainly don't want to take that down because that makes Lunenburg a New England town. I do wish the clock worked, but... Okay, the school next door. We've got to do something about senior housing in town for people that have lived here for umpteen years, finally get to the point that they have to sell their homes and then they can't find a place to live. That would be ideal. It has entrances to the outside from each classroom. It has a main door. It has a community section for cafeteria or whatever they call that. They have a gym, which could maybe even be rented out to other groups. I don't know about the infrastructure as far as the plumbing is concerned, but certainly there are bathrooms in there. They'd have to do something to revamp them, but there has to be a place for people who have given their life savings to this town, and then suddenly they get to the point they can't keep their house up any longer. They have to move out of town, and they're perfectly well.
Are you talking more like condominium apartment
No,
or more
rental.
like a communal living?
Oh, no. A rental apartment for
Okay.
people, so they can come and go. They have parking right outside the door. They're within the historical district. If there's, a little shop set up somewhere else.
Okay.
They're convenient to here, to the library, to the police station, to any activity
Sure.
downtown. Okay, we did mention something about asbestos, but I guess that can be corrected if there's...
Yeah, and again, I mean, if we're dreaming here, we're dreaming, and the details can get worked out if we move.
Okay,
in that direction.
the Ritter should be leased, certainly not sold. And we were thinking about maybe having an upscale restaurant there, really upscale. We didn't go into too many details, but the architecture in there is just wonderful. So you certainly wouldn't want it to be torn down. And what didn't I cover? The Brooks House, that really can be a go. I don't think we need that. Anything else?
I don't know, anything else?
Green space.
You
Green
guys
space,
had such a
whatever.
nice discussion.
Green space,
Green
wherever
space?
we can have it. And I think this idea of a winter festival or some other activities during the summer would be perfect if we have green space. But then we need parking, and that's why some of these areas, like behind where they take, if they take down the old school, we have some extra parking. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Are you ready now, Jack?
Oh, gosh.
Here you go.
By the way, I have permission to be here from my wife, Jane. She was going to come, but she couldn't make it. But anyway, there's a real consensus here, at least from what I've seen so far. First of all, I think we're unanimous in that the primary school, let it go. Tear it down, turn it into a beautiful green area. We're thinking that, remember a long time ago, the soccer games used to be behind there, and you go watch the kids, and you'd all sit on the side of the hill. Well, why wouldn't we do something like that? Convert that into green space, put some, make it into an amphitheater so we can listen to a concert. All sorts of things that can go on. And of course, get the kids soccer games because they're tons of fun to watch. Magnet ball, right? So off of that would also give us more parking over there, and then we can move the farmers market. Like they do in a lot of other towns, out to larger parking areas where people come in, park, get in and get out, move it on a Saturday, and guess what? If we have them watch the soccer games, they walk by the farm stands. There we go. We got business for our farmers. Yeah. So anyway, okay, let go. The second one is, we're absolutely in agreement that tear the Brooks house down. It needs a lot of work, and there's no real functional value there for us, so we see no value in holding that. Now we start getting into the interesting spots. Oh, let's go to the bright spot. Ritter, we're in total consensus in terms of keep the Ritter. When we drive up to the center of town, I don't look down at the barn down here. I look at the Ritter and say, what a beautiful old building that is. We don't want to see anything happen to that that's going to change the outside for sure. And at the same time, if we put parking in that spot over there, well then people can go and we can make use of that Ritter building in all sorts of shapes and forms, of whether it's a farmer's market, farm table market. Something good will come out of that. We're not worried about that.
So you think it should be owned, leased, and used municipally?
We're not forever selling anything that's the center of it, but lease it. And create, we talked about some sort of a corporation, remember David, in terms of being able to, get a group of investors potentially to work and partner with the town, to partner with some sort of other entity.
So that's not exactly right. You offer to fund it.
Oh. I would put cups around.
So you're talking about non-municipal use at the Ritter, though?
Non-municipal use.
Owned by the town, leased.
Owned by the leased out, and some sort of an agreement with the potential for whoever that's going to be. And keep it looking like it is, and don't muck around with it, and we'll have the parking on the side. Okay, the town hall. There was an overwhelming consensus with the group, tear it down, turn it into some sort of a green space. And I'll go back, remember 25 years ago, they came to us and said we want to redo the town hall. Remember that? And we spent $125,000 for the architects to come through and do that. And we spent the money at town hall, but when it came to vote, no one had the stomach for it because the feeling was that basically we're putting a lot of good money after bad. And there was not an overwhelming reason to do that. So our group, it was an overwhelming consensus. I won't say it was totally unanimous, but the unanimous party was open to hearing all sorts of ideas. And the thing was, we do want to see a plan at the end of this, and then we put some cash into it, because that was the thing that kept bumping up against us the whole time. Okay, now the patios, there was a consensus on let's move into the patios, use it as one large area. We like the concept of an open kitchen going there. And there's a lot of uses that we could actually generate some revenue out of it. And me personally, I think, like yourself, we need to do something about helping our seniors. I know I've just finished up taking care of my mom for 2 years, and I knew I had to stay around. I couldn't really leave. And if we could create some sort of a senior drop-off center that said, bring them over, they'll be safe there, we won't have to worry about it. There's that kind of thing that can happen there. There's also other classes, and I think you're putting, even potentially daycare classes in with seniors. That creates a really neat environment for everybody. So we're looking at this whole district as just one place where a town can live, and we'll have commercial buildings and green space up the top.
I want to jump back. You said we should move in there. You mean town offices?
Town offices should move in there, along with other things. It's a big building. Remember, you don't have to subscribe to Parkinson's law that says you give government enough space and they'll fill it, and you give them more space and they'll fill it again. We do need to have to worry about just the continued expansion. So yeah, we're all for that, and it's one floor, there's plenty of parking, and everybody knows where it is. We go to vote, we go play basketball, we can do all sorts of stuff there. So let that move into a big green field. So is that fair, guys? Is that what you okay?
Thank you.
There you go. Oh, I'm sorry. Two things I jumped on. We want parking space, we want usable sidewalks, and we want public toilets. You can't get it. Well, if you're going to have businesses and things like that, you can't. Where do you go to the bathroom on the weekends? Home. You can't get into town hall anymore. You know. So public toilet. Well, Friday.
Makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, that makes sense when you think about it. I should have been using
All right, last but not least, we have one last group, right?
It has to be you. You're the one that's taking notes.
This is what you get for taking notes.
I know. I'm not doing that next time. Okay. We talked about town center being all at one place.
Town hall,
Yeah.
municipal offices?
Yeah, all at one place, and it was TTP. Want to use it half for town offices and half as a makerspace for other entrepreneurs to come and use it, like at the Cambridge stuff. Primary school demolished. We spoke
I gotta
about.
catch
Oh,
up.
sorry, you're not
That's all
talking
right.
about?
No, I'm not. Okay, we're back to the old primary.
Yeah, take it down. It's a liability issue. We spoke about senior housing over there and green space.
We'll see if I can read it tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
We talked about a revolving fund for maintenance of all the buildings. Make sure that we can afford to maintain it.
Okay.
The Ritter building stays at, but the only idea we had was well, it's mine, was the restaurant.
So retain ownership,
Yeah.
lease for some other purpose?
Yes.
Okay.
We didn't talk about Brooks building because we got sidetracked by the parking spaces over at Marshall Park, right?
Parking spaces
Parking
throughout
spaces throughout town.
throughout the
Okay.
town.
Yeah. The need for parking. Okay, that was it.
Great, thank you. All right, so great ideas. This is the kind of stuff we're looking for. Maybe none of these come true. Maybe all of them come true. I don't think they can all come true because there's some conflict. But I heard some definite audible gasps when someone said tear down town hall. So that will certainly be a fun town meeting when someone proposes that. But I want to go back to the thing that we did before we started doing this, and we asked you all to think about the places that you want to go back to, that you like, that feel good, that give you sort of that warm, fuzzy feeling. And I want to go around, and I want everyone to sort of either say what that place is or what about that place gives them that sort of warm, fuzzy feeling so that we can try and put all of these together. We had a really great list at the last forum that we did. It was probably about 60 or 80 different things that people came up with of different, a variety of different things, and I think that will help us kind of push in a direction of where we want to go from a concept, maybe not from a final execution kind of standpoint. So, do I have a ball? I'll start with Ken, because he's been quiet this whole time.
So, different towns, is that what you're
It could be towns, it could even be a street, it could just be something about it. Something about a place that you're like, I'd like to come back to these kind of places.
Yeah, I mean, I think for myself, Groton and Shelburne Falls, Mass, sort of they have a good mix of commercial, retail, restaurants, artisans. Like Shelburne Falls, I think is a great little town. To say whether we can mimic places like that, I don't really know.
And I don't think that we're looking to recreate, but I think that, restaurant, retail, walkability. Right. That's the kind of thing that we heard a lot of, and it's funny, Shelburne Falls was one of the things that came up about 3 or 4 times at the last meeting. Yeah. So it's, just hearing that and even taking, when we have repeated examples, we can go to these places and we can say, what have they done? What does their zoning look like? Right. Do they have some sort of implicit program? Do they have a business improvement district where the people have agreed to pay a percentage of additional tax to improve that place, whether it's for parking or infrastructure or something else, and try and recreate some of those tools that will give us the ability?
I think, Adam, one other place that I think of, and obviously I'm not comparing us to Freeport, Maine, but to talk about parking, I think they do parking really well. It's sort of off to the side and it's not obtrusive, it's not ugly. So I think, to the parking area, that would be something to look at. They incorporate green space with the parking, but I think that to me is an area that obviously parking is a huge issue for us. So that would be one place we could look at.
That's exactly the kind of stuff. Jack?
Oh, well, anybody been in Niagara Falls?
Yeah.
You go out or follow the Niagara down there, and there's a town called on the lake, or Niagara on the lake. Yeah. And everybody goes there. They call it the prettiest town in Canada. And essentially, it's all flowers. It's amazing what they've done. They've planted flowers everywhere, flower boxes, continuous range of colors, and it goes for about a half mile. Now, it helps they have some wineries behind it. But we have trails. We have conservation trails. We have a real opportunity. If we can put some color in the center of town and put some shops where people might want to come and visit the artisans and things like that, then I think that we'll start getting some sort of draw. And if there's a nice little pub they can stop by, and if there's a parking lot where the bicyclists can come up, they can start hitting all our conservation trails. And all of a sudden we create a community that's attractive. People are going to want to live here, but it's going to be a pleasant place to come down and just go to the center of town, hit Elena's, get your case of wine, and hopefully there's enough parking space to be able to, but that's the problem right now. We can't do that. So I think get flowers, get colors, put planter boxes in there, and it'll create a reason for some of the merchants to consider relocating here. That's right.
How about you, sir?
I'm a big Chronicle watcher. There are dozens of examples of towns that look or that could look just like ours, or ours should look like them. If you are going to make some changes in the town, take that as an advantage to protect the history by a little trail that says, this building used to be here, it served its purpose for many years, but now it's part of our historic memory. And, preserve the things that we are changing as a part of our growth, and applaud that and add what Jack is saying, bring new businesses here, because I think people were saying, why do we need all this parking? Well, if you bring shops and things of that sort, you are going to need parking. So look at it for future. The parking is there. Hopefully that will bring people here and be worth wanting to come and enjoy our wonderful town.
So you're suggesting that we create some sort of wayfinding or marker program that would memorialize things that have contributed to the area that maybe either don't exist or won't exist.
Yeah, for example, we were talking about the clock earlier. If that clock was somehow removed, we build a clock on the sidewalk as a site of, and this clock represents what used to be here, and hopefully that clock will work.
Yeah. And again, I just want to understand what people are saying and make sure I'm not misrepresenting.
Right.
Okay. Should we go back to the next slide in the pink?
Where I would like to be, is that what you're saying?
Places that you like to visit, what are characteristics?
I think Hancock, New Hampshire is very nice. There's an inn there, it has a little country store, has a beautiful tree in the fall, in the center. It's just New England.
All right. Who would like to go next? We'll come to the front row. Okay. Would you like to go? No? How about behind you in the purple glasses? That's you? Yeah. No? Dave?
I like what we got.
I like the
Perfect.
beach myself, but I can't, we don't have one ocean here.
All right. Would you like to go?
Sure. I don't know if anybody knows this, but my husband and I have been to every single one of the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts.
We all know now.
We made it a project, and we started that in 2007, and we have not stopped researching and traveling since that time. So we have a lot of experience with the state, and of course a lot of it is subjective, but there are two things that we can't have here that we love, and that is ocean and long, green, beautiful, lush commons. And those are two things that we can't have. I would hearken back to say to the town hall, to those people that are unhappy about taking it down, that two of my favorite places were Southbridge, where they had a beautiful town hall that had stained glass in it that was beautifully preserved and not only historic but safe and beautiful, and Petersham, where the Daniel Shades rebellion was planned. We have neither one of those. So what we can do is preserve our history, like this gentleman over here said, and make better use of it. And I think better publicly make use of this town. If you go on, I go on websites every single day. Every single day I put something out on Facebook about this town. And if you go to Lunenburg, you don't see a lot of things about Lunenburg to draw you here. There's the drawbridge puppet. There's the Luther Burbank. Wayland Park is closed. There's the Luther Burbank House, and that's about it. And I think we need to start thinking about things that we want to bring people here. Exactly what he said.
Wonderful. Thank you.
My favorite place has always been Walden Pond. Anytime, in fact, my wife and I went there at 12 o'clock midnight on New Year's Eve once, at a time when the world was unsettled. And I think Lunenburg has the capacity to bring that kind of sense to people. I love this concept of green space that's come up. During our stroll, Jim Larkin did a historical tour of the center and walked around and explained that we have a lot of new people in this town. I have no idea about this town's background. And beginning in the center and talking about each of the buildings, what was or has been here, all the way down to the town pound. Town pound has been mentioned. No one wants to tear that down, and it served all purpose. I think if that sort of historical sense, it's a historical district, but nobody really, I think, can tell you why it is, what's been going on here. And the second thing is the use of the trails that we have, not just the Malpas area, but all the ones down in Hickory Hills with the Lane property, which have just been being developed, and great places. It's not Walden Pond, but it's a place to use Lunenburg as a place to reflect and get out in the countryside, because we still are a rural
from.
Sure. Great, thank you.
Nantucket Island.
Nantucket.
Its charm, its history is on Main Street and everywhere you go. People are close-knit there because it's a small town, like Lunenburg is compared to the others. But I hope it never changes. I don't think it will. It never has.
Great, thank you.
A lot of history.
I like what Pete, sorry, that's the first time, he was Mr. Lincoln to me until today. The big expansive green spaces, so I think even like what Townsend did when they, historically were creating that space and left the green in the middle was clever. And then when they recreated a village in Sturbridge, they did that same sort of thing. I think that was smart for people to do. And I think even though we can't create that space surrounded by storefronts and houses like someplace like Townsend did, we do have land where we can try to do a throwback to that historic town green.
Okay. Would you like to go?
I've been very fortunate to live not only in the U.S. but in Europe and Asia. And I was thinking, I think the most important part of the places I've lived and what I remember is not only the history of the small towns, but the artisanship that is around. I mean, it's amazing how many, you can call them artisans, we have in this community, whether it's in small farms. Our farmers market is growing. But to highlight all that stuff, to get artisans to come, we need to be able to have a traffic flow. Like someone was saying, we need to solve the parking problem. I mean, people drive by and they go, oh, there's a farmer's market, but where do you park? Or our Monday evening concerts on the Common, they're great to go to, but where do you park? And how safe is it? The police department does a great job. These are the things we need to go. I really kind of gasped when they said demolish the town hall. But then when you were talking about taking the clock, and in Europe there are many buildings that are gone, but you see beautiful sketches of them, and you read histories of them, and if the clock was a centerpiece of it, I think that would be gorgeous. We need to think about traffic flow, the idea of publicizing our open spaces. Lunenburg is a beautiful community, but no one knows about it. So,
Sir? Do you have anything?
I would just echo Mr. Rogers' comment. I like it just the way it is.
Just the way it is. You got a lady? No? All right, we'll go to the back row.
Oh, no.
No?
Well, I like Lunenburg. I grew up here. Went to school. They say primary school. I think of it as the high school. The only thing is, why'd they take the stairs off the Ritter building? Front stairs.
Well, I think that's now someone's office, so I think they didn't want people thinking they could get in there.
Oh, well, that's the only thing I missed. I mean, we used to sit there and read on the stairs when I was a kid.
All right, great, thank you.
Yeah, I lived on the corner of Page Street and Lancaster Avenue.
Oh, okay. Great. Yeah? No?
I lived in Peterborough, New Hampshire for several years.
Okay.
And I think there's a lot that Lunenburg could do that Peterborough has done with the little shops. It's very artsy there. I think they have a lot of different community festivals and activities that bring people to town, and different little pubs and whatever, in downtown. And you can also, it's walkable. So I think that would be great for Lunenburg to look at.
All right. You, ma'am?
Anything? Anything?
Any town you want, that you really like, that you want to see Lunenburg kind of replicate?
Come on, you've been in Lunenburg for a
I
long
grew
time.
up in a small town, which has grown, so I don't know it anymore. And I don't want people to feel that Lunenburg is going to get too big.
Okay.
I'd like to keep it a small town.
How about you?
No, I
Nope.
that might be so.
Okay.
I just have to add that I am a New Englander, I'm a Lunenburger, I've never moved out of here, and I enjoy going through a small New England town, and there are elements to a small New England town. And that is a congregational church, a town hall that's recognizable as a town hall, a library. We have the Ritter Library. I remember going there when I was a young teenager, and I think it was it Edie Proctor used to be right there when you went in the building. And so it brings back a lot of good memories. The town hall, I know that there's been talk about raising that. I attended class there in the 7th grade when they were building the new wing over at the high school that just got torn down. So I would hate to see that go. But I think that visually, in order to bring new people into the town, to make it viable, to make it interesting, it needs to be visually a New England town.
Yes.
And to tear it all down or change it drastically is not the way to go. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Ma'am? No?
No. I
Amber?
love my backyard.
Can we bring it downtown?
I live on the Lancaster Avenue Raceway.
Oh, okay.
6 o'clock in the morning, it's dangerous to go out and get your newspaper, okay? Because the tanker trucks are barreling down the avenue. I wish there was a way that they could control the speed limit. I live in a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, and they're barreling down the avenue at 50 miles an hour. I go into my backyard and I'm in heaven. It's wonderful in my backyard, okay?
Okay.
If I could add something to that, Lancaster Avenue and a lot of other parts of town are historic districts. And I don't know, not just it, but a historic road, I believe.
Scenic road.
Scenic road.
A Massachusetts thing.
And how are we allowing trucks and cement trucks to be traveling the way they do on a scenic road?
So scenic roads are a visual thing, and it's just the stone walls and the trees. The speed limit is dictated through a DOT process, and so a lot of people want to do things like truck exclusions on certain roads, and those are also approved by DOT. And there's a study that goes along with it, and you need to have an alternative means of transport from one place to another. Stuff like Lancaster Ave and Leominster Road don't often have the ability to have that exclusion because the traveling from south to north and north to south, there isn't another viable route. So something like, I know the selectmen, and this is kind of beyond what we're talking about here, but they've looked at truck exclusions up through Main Street and Highland because there are other ways to get to Route 13.
We have state roads.
Correct. But the state roads, Lancaster, I don't think, there's a, and I don't know what the definitive title is, but it has to do with proximity and the ability to viably transport from one place to the other. I think that's why Lancaster hasn't been looked at that way, and it is a public road. So the scenic road is less about how the road is used and more about the view off the road within the right-of-way. So if you want, you can contact me or certainly the DPW director or the town manager, and we can try and get you some more information on that.
Well, we have many conversations over the scenic designated.
I'm sure.
road and how and why.
Yeah.
You just answered it, I guess.
Well, I'm glad I could help.
But the speed limit is still 30 miles an hour, and they're barreling down at 50.
Correct. Unfortunately, I don't have a badge or a radar gun, so I think we could probably get you in touch with the chief, and he might, I know they sometimes will do, they'll put the speed trailer out there, and that slows people down for a little bit, and it gives them ideas of where to do enforcement. But unfortunately, that's outside of my scope of practice, so... And I do appreciate what you're saying. It's understandable. I'm not sure all the things that can be done to address that. But if you want to contact us, we can certainly put you in touch with the right people.
Thanks.
Amory?
Well, the reason I moved to Lunenburg 18 years ago, because I love the outdoor. We have all these mountains, all these hiking trails, so much activity if you enjoy the outdoors. Coupled with that, the most beautiful small town that I really loved was Cohasset, Massachusetts. So Cohasset, when I drove into this town, because I bought a 250-year-old house, and I drove into this town and I said, well, it's got the mountains, it has everything I want, it's got the old town charm, it's just beautiful. And so Cohasset Lunenburg really reminds me of Cohasset. And in addition, they keep adding more walking trails, hiking trails. I wish they would identify the trails on Lane property, because I got lost. And I didn't think I was going to ever get out of there. But, you know, the town just has so much to offer for people who really love the outdoor, and I think it should be promoted that way.
Okay. And last but not least,
My two towns were Princeton and Peterson. I grew up pretty close to those. I know that they are a lot more rural than we are, but they have taken a lot of effort, have put a lot of effort into preserving their historic buildings and their commons, and it's part of the core identity of their town. We could do that here, plus some good restaurants, maybe, uptown. I just think that it's important that we preserve that the town hall. It's part of why we're fairly new to town, so it's part of why we chose Lunenburg.
Great. Thank you.
I forgot to say something when I was talking. I grew up in Leominster, and I grew up coming to Lake Whalum on the big side, and I learned to swim there. It drives me insane that it's not open for the community. All summer, I didn't see anybody out there from the condos. Does it belong to that condo?
It does.
It drives me. And then the fact that they built those condos right on the sand, I hope they are not going to do more of that. I just think it ruins the whole look of the lake.
Yeah, I think that development's pretty much done. And that was approved, I think, back in 2011 as part of their modification to that approval.
Well, Lunenburg, as you know, has that little plain sign.
I spent many a summer days there.
It drives me crazy, because I never saw anybody from the condos out there last summer, or any summer, using it. So, just thought I'd add that.
Sure. Oh, we got one. I haven't heard from this.
Now, I'm just a little concerned about the cost of anything that's going to happen in this town. It seems like every time you turn around, our taxes go up. It's ridiculous. So I wondered, is that a factor here?
Well, right now we're just talking conceptually. Ultimately, when anything starts to happen, cost becomes a factor, and there needs to be a way to pay for it. Right now, we're trying to understand what direction the community wants to move and get the feedback on where they want to go before there's a final decision on what the actual plan is. And then once that actual plan gets drawn up, then cost will start to become a factor. Right now, we're just talking about what people want and what the the process might look like.
Well, I just thought I would mention.
No, it's a completely reasonable...
Yeah. You weren't here. So you weren't here. You weren't here. I didn't hear at the beginning. But the cost overrides, they just, like a thing that they just do all the time around this town. Or any town. Any town. Yeah, I know, it's just like a common thing to do. And people are, you know, they need to watch their money.
And I don't know,
Stay in this town.
I just want to make a clarifying statement, though. I don't think there's been a 2.5 override in this community in quite a few years.
2 years, wasn't it?
There was a debt exclusion. That was the debt exclusion. Now, the difference is the debt exclusion is a raising of those taxes above the 2.5% for a fixed period of time for a specific project. And I appreciate what you're saying, it does raise the taxes, but as opposed to a 2.5 override, which allows the continual increase, yes, over in perpetuity over time. So it's a slight difference, but it is ultimately that cost comes off the books at a fixed period of time, much like the school projects will start to fall off the books and there'll be less of an impact over
Yes,
time.
I've lived here quite a while and I've seen all kinds of...
Sure.
But also, Adam, you know, they do go up 2.5% every year.
They do. They do.
That's not nothing, that's 10% over 4 years.
Correct. And I'm not saying that cost shouldn't be a factor and that taxes aren't an issue. I just want to be clear about, you know, the difference between an override and an exclusion. And, you know, as with everything else, the cost of doing business goes up over time. The cost of goods and services goes up over time, and the town is keeping pace with that as best they can. And again, cost is certainly a factor. We need to be smart with our money, and we all do pay taxes and have to make sure that we're appropriately apportioning those funds to get the most for what we're paying for.
I have a question about the Architectural Preservation District.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of take down the old primary because that's sort of dilapidated and dangerous. But in terms of the buildings that are still in use, when you talked about things moving in, holes and stuff, and they couldn't be changed or a glass window couldn't be in, how under those same rules could we tear down Town Hall? Wouldn't that be protected, or shouldn't it?
Well, it's the demolition delay bylaw is something that exists townwide, and it says that you have to wait 6 months or find an alternate use for the building or have it moved. And those powers are given to the Architectural Preservation District Commission. And they could deny the demolition, pardon my fat tongue, of Town Hall. And that would be final, but they also could be convinced that for whatever reason, the demolition of Town Hall was the most appropriate course of action, whether it was structural ability, lack of ability to reuse it, unsafe, whatever. There could be an argument made, and they could make the decision that it was appropriate to tear it down.
But the protection is there to be protected.
Potentially, yes. They also could say, no, don't tear it down. It's critical to the character. They could also say, we'd like to see you move it and pick it up and put it somewhere else.
Adam, it's lunchtime at the Senior Center.
Sorry. I want to leave in good graces, so I'll thank everybody. And, if you have additional questions, my office is in the Ritter. Feel free to walk over, drive over, stick your head in. I'd be happy to chat and give you any answers I have. If not, I'll voice you off on someone else who may or may not have the answers.
Thank you. Thank you all.